Why have so many companies made their base in Bangalore, and how can they hang on to their homegrown talent? Make the connection now on BBC World News as a panel of entrepreneurs and experts join Yogita Limaye for this week's Talking Business.
Hello, I'm Yogita Limaye in Bangalore. This city is India's startup capital. But what does it take to be an entrepreneur in one of the fastest growing economies in the world? That's what we'll be discussing on this week's edition of Talking Business. Welcome to the program. Bangalore's long been home to India's tech industry, but in recent years it's also gained the reputation of the place to be if you want to start your own business. And it is attracting attention from around the world, with the likes of Facebook, Google and other multinational companies acquiring businesses here. Just last week, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi called on the youth of this country to be innovative and promised that the government will support startups. Nevertheless, India is not known as a country that's an easy place to do business in. So what's it really like to start a company here? Well, I have three entrepreneurs with me who will perhaps give us the answer to that question. Anand Satyan, who's founded a company called Boutline, which is a fan engagement startup. Richa Kar, who runs an online lingerie store, Zivame, and Somnath Meher, who started a company that aims to make innovative consumer products called Witwa, who's also an entrepreneurial venture. It's called Gallery G. You know, in recent years, India has gained this reputation of having so many startups, so many entrepreneurs here. There's a real buzz about what's happening in the country. Is there enough money? Are there enough investors? If you've got a great idea today in India, Richa, can you start a business easily?
No, there is capital. There's definitely capital, more capital than what there was 3 years back, 4 years back, 5 years back. There are a lot of startups which are getting funded, but it's not as easy as it would be possibly in the Silicon Valley, right? So, but relatively entrepreneurship in India is in this sense, the startup culture in India is also very, very new. So I would say it's a lot more encouraging today than it was in the past.
Are there regulatory hurdles? Because internationally, India has an image of being a very difficult place to work in.
So if you'd asked me this question probably 3 years back, things were completely different. And it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that things have completely changed. If you want to register a firm, it's about a week's process, right?
Online, that too?
Yeah, so which is not bad, which we wouldn't have dreamt of probably 3-4 years back. But now things are changing at a very rapid rate. I mean, it's just unbelievable because 3 years back, 4 years back when I had to register a company, it took me about 3 weeks to get everything done. But the latest firm which I started, it took me, everything was sorted in 10 days. That's it. Max 10 days, that's all it takes. So with respect to regulatory hurdles, especially with respect to incorporation, I don't see that going, I don't see a problem. I think India's going in a very, very good direction where things are happening really fast. And a lot of people are able to identify these problems with respect to starting a company. And the ecosystem as such is growing at such a rapid rate that I don't see these hurdles at all in the next 1 or 2 years. None of these hurdles.
So you think, say, 10 years ago, if somebody it's much easier to start a business now than say
Yeah, at least when I started, I got my company incorporated online. You know, everything was done online. I didn't even have to go to an office, like, you know, government office to kind of get the paperwork done. Then there is another ecosystem of people who are working towards getting things done, whether it is on accounts, whether it's on legal. So everybody also understands as there are more startups growing, they also need these services, financial services, legal services. So all that help also has helped us get over or at least get past, let's say, statutory hurdles, if you could say.
So money is one thing, support, you know, regulatory hurdles are one thing. Is there enough mentoring to just, you know, for people like you who've just started a business to understand whether this is an idea that can work, not work? Are there enough experienced people to do that?
I'm not too sure how it was, say, a few years back, but right now people are really, really accessible. So if you really want to meet the founder of a successful startup company, they're just probably in your second degree of connection, and they're more than willing to meet you. Apart from that, there are a lot of other people in the ecosystem who have sent businesses through, And I would say they're really, really accessible. So mentoring, I don't see it as a problem. Mentoring, there are a lot of mentors around. They're more than willing to help, and there's enough to gain from their experience as well.
Well, before we move further with the discussion, let's take a quick look at where India's startup industry actually is compared to other countries around the world, and also how fast is it actually growing? It's not a stretch to say that India's startup industry is moving at breakneck speed. If you open any of the financial newspapers here, you'd be hard-pressed to find a single day that goes by without news of investment in some startup or the other. Currently home to 3,100 such companies, a report by India's Association of Software Firms says the number will grow nearly 4 times to 11,500 by 2020. Over 2011 to 2014, around $3 billion were invested in Indian startups, most of them in the technology or e-commerce space. All of this makes the industry here the 5th largest in the world after the US, Europe, Canada and China. Is India's startup industry moving too fast for its own good? Are solid companies being founded that could eventually make a mark globally, or are they simply flash-in-the-pan ventures that could burn large amounts of cash in a short time? It's certainly an exciting yet challenging time for India's startup industry, and much of it is happening right here in Bangalore city. So which direction is India's startup industry heading in? Well, we still have our 3 entrepreneurs with us, Anand, Richa and Somnath. But we're also now being joined by Arjun Narayan, who's the founder of Catamaran Ventures, which is one of India's largest private investment funds. There's a very broad question I want to raise here, that there's so much innovation, so much buzz about what's going on in India, and yet there isn't a globally known brand or product, even on the technology side, that comes out of here. Why is that?
I could actually name about 20 companies which are absolutely innovative in India, but they've probably been in stealth mode or haven't raised enough amount of money for them to get that kind of attention today. But they're doing extremely well, and they're bootstrapped, and which is probably one of the reasons I believe that a lot of startups don't get the kind of attention they deserve to get, because I have a couple of friends who've started very, very innovative companies who are doing really well, doing massive revenues already, and it's just probably recently that they've gained that recognition because they've raised their first round of investment.
But is there a next big idea? I think that's really what I'm getting at. Is innovation in India really innovation, or are we really just copying a lot of what the West is doing?
So there is a lot of work happening here, and there's a lot of very innovative work happening here. But I probably would have one question. How do you judge a startup? Or this is probably for Arjun. How do you empirically say that this startup is better than this startup? Is it purely based on the rounds, the number of rounds or the amount of money they've raised? Or is there a better way to do it?
Oh, that's, I'm sure Richa would agree. That's absolutely the worst way to think about the value of a startup.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm sure that answers your question. But I think it's fundamentally about trying to find a product market fit in an interesting and innovative way, and to be in the company of great people, right? So you want to have great founders, you want to have great early employees, you want to have great mentors, you want to have a great board, you probably want to have great early customers. Like a lot of these companies, especially outside of the consumer space, need great early customers who will both push you to innovate on your product as well as pay you for innovating on the product. That combination is absolutely essential.
So Somnath, is that what you find when you try and go to someone to ask for funding? Is it almost like, when are they going to see the returns?
Returns is something that is being calculated based on how a particular space is going to evolve over a period of time. And for that, the proxy is again based on a successful business model in the West. So amidst all this, if you were to really come up with something that is beyond the sectors that are currently, I would say, technically hot, or a business model that probably is slightly, if not futuristic, slightly more, I would say, wishful or slightly more, innovative, it gets a little tough to explain as to how it is going to evolve or when the returns are going to come. And that's sadly the fact.
Arjun, do investors have enough patience?
Well, I think investors often have no choice but to be patient. But I completely resonate with what Richa said and what Somnath said. I think India is a country where to build anything takes time. It takes a lot of learning because we're a very heterogeneous market with lots of different tastes and variants within it. And I actually do agree with what Somnath said. In many cases, you find that investors don't have the patience to let that learning curve happen. That's one of the things that we try to do differently. We're very long-term capital. About 5 years ago, we invested in a beverage company. Okay, I think we're probably still, it's probably still one of the only few venture-funded beverage companies in India. It's had no clones. But it takes time, right? And you have to be able to shut out the West in some sense to focus on what is your real problem, what is your real environment, and build a business that gives you the runway to do it over a very long period of time.
So we talked about money, we talked about regulation. Richard, the other thing you need when you're scaling up a business is talent. Are there enough people, are there enough employable people in India? Is it easy for you to find the right fit for the jobs that you are creating, for example, in your company?
Now I think with actually so much of focus around entrepreneurship in India, with capital availability, with a focus to build businesses, right? Not really look at an SME, but really build it at scale. Now we are able to get actually people from with a lot of experience in corporates and big corporates who are willing to come and join startups, right? They're willing to take a cut on their salary, they're willing to take a cut on their lifestyle, put in extra hours of work, because they also like the idea of creating something together. And so to answer your question, I would say it has been a challenge, but it is changing. It is changing at a pace which is extremely encouraging for us today.
Well, thanks very much. We are going to continue with this discussion. And actually, one of the points I want to raise later on is that is it only in the tech and e-commerce space that we're seeing all of this innovation and entrepreneurship and support? Are the other sectors in India being neglected? We're also going to talk about what India's tag as the fastest growing major economy in the world means for entrepreneurs here. Stay with us. Welcome back to Talking Business. I'm Yogita Lamai, and this week we're in India's tech capital, Bangalore. In the latest installment of our look at the history of capitalism, our comedy consultant Colm O'Regan went to Dublin, Ireland's tech capital, to see how capitalism is working out in the 21st century.
I'm Colm O'Regan and welcome to Dublin. This week I'm bringing my very, very short history of capitalism bang up to date, up to the 21st century capitalism. Google, Facebook, Twitter, the whole internet shebang.
The best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I keep on.
But what does capitalism even look like today? Is it smokestacks and big chimneys? Or is it Google and don't be evil and everybody sitting around in ironic t-shirts?
These kind of innovations, big new technologies, always change the way people want to do business in quite profound ways.
The shiny buildings in this area all around me are just a tiny part of that innovation. Ireland's technological cluster, or Silicon Valley, if you will. Get that smell? That's the smell of code being written in the morning.
Emergence of new industries and bubbles, that speculative bubbles following that emergence, is a common feature in capitalism.
So that's all very well, but what does the Dublin of 5 or 6 years ago tell us about the crisis of capitalism?
Dublin is the epicenter of both the crisis of capitalism and also the causes of that crisis as well. Ireland has skipped the industrial development period and all other stages of capitalism and moved straight towards the embracement of corporatism.
There was an kind of implicit deal whereby the rest of the society just left finance to be run by the financiers and left banking to be run by the bankers. I think one of the things that happened after the credit crunch was a general realization that we can't let them just go and write their own rules.
We have in the last few decades been dominated by this neoliberal view, which harks back to the days of Adam Smith. So we actually are living in a world which is fundamentally different, but have been running things as if we are living in the 18th century. That's the tragedy of our time.
The real question seems to be, does anybody know what's going on anymore? This building behind me was to be the new headquarters of Anglo-Irish Bank. The bank went spectacularly bust in 2010 and its losses, some 30 billion euro, were socialised.
We've effectively taken the pain of the crisis and applied it to absolutely everyone but the corporatist partners.
As if to layer on the symbolism with a thick trowel left over from the building boom, these headquarters here are to be the new headquarters of our own Irish Central Bank. So there we are, capitalism in the 21st century. Has it been captured by the big corporations and the vested interests? Or did all those bailouts and all that quantitative easing save it so that it now emerges fitter and stronger? Or could it be that no one really knows anymore where capitalism is even going in future?
Colm O'Regan in Dublin there. Now, Ireland's economy was growing very fast before the financial crisis, but now it's still struggling to recover. India, on the other hand, is one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. So what does that mean for businesses here? We still have our guests with us, Anand, Richa, Somnath and Arjun. India has recently acquired the tag of being the fastest growing major economy in the world. Richa, is that something you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you see so much of consumerism. You see people changing the way, at least in in e-commerce, people have changed the way they have bought services, bought products before. They're using internet a lot more. Women are getting online, which is, people are using mobile to transact, people are using mobile to consume content, and all of this is a part of a growing economy in the way businesses around this would start shaping up.
I asked this question, Arjun, because there has been skepticism about this 7.5% figure. Lots of people think that actually it's not what's happening on the ground. You invest in businesses that are not just tech and not just e-commerce. Is that something you're seeing all through?
Yeah, wow, tough question, Yogita. So what we see is actually different sector to sector. We're seeing outside of tech, we're seeing a slow resumption of the investment cycle in mature businesses, manufacturing businesses, auto components, etc. This should probably translate into growth over the next, I'd say, 4 quarters. It's not been immediate. It's not been something that you could accelerate by just putting capital into those businesses. But we have seen it's taking some time for businesses to start reinvesting for growth. We're seeing that happening. We're seeing actually a lot of our portfolio companies actually now investing a lot. The subsequent growth has not yet come. We think it will come in a few quarters.
So your business is a little different from theirs in the sense that you're actually trying to make consumer products. Do you think that when it comes to manufacturing, India still has a very long way to go before it can say that it wants to become the manufacturing hub of the world?
In all due honesty, we have tried getting stuff manufactured in India, and how much ever I would want to say that it's mature, it's evolving, it's still way behind a more mature manufacturing market and the Asian markets primarily. In the way that it's not just about infrastructure as much as it is about an entire ecosystem that needs to be built around it. To be very honest, we're still at least a decade behind, and I'm sure this distance can be covered pretty quickly, and there's a lot of positive sentiments around it. But as of now, on this day, as a product maker myself, I will be very skeptical about getting the product made in India. One, because of the speed, secondly because of the quality, and thirdly because of not having access to the right components or the right parts that I would require in the country, because eventually they are going to come down from somewhere else. So India is a very good place to design stuff, I would say, and also to consume stuff. But in terms of actually getting it made, there's still some time. To be very honest, there's still some time.
Richa, in your business, where you have an online lingerie store, if you want to grow the business, obviously you've said there are lots of consumers. I mean, India is a country of, more than 1.2 billion people, as we say all the time. There's a big push for digital penetration across the country. Is that something you see helping you out in the future?
Absolutely, absolutely. Not just the digital penetration, but the way mobile penetration it's growing exponentially. And today, mobile penetration has enabled people in tier 2, tier 3 city also to get digitally enabled, right? So which means now, specifically in our business, women have access to shop let's say, intimates from the privacy of their home, from the most personal devices. So now they don't have to use a home shared computer to shop online, right? And I think that becomes a very, very big growth driver for us as such. 25% of our revenues come from tier 3 cities, and where we don't even market. You know, most of our marketing is usually digital top 10 city kind of targeting, right? And we see a lot of growth and traction coming in. 50% of our revenues are on mobile, from mobile. 65% of our traffic is on mobile. So I see India is getting digitally enabled through mobile more than the way we say internet penetration in India through desktops or tablets.
Does the government have anything to do with that, or this is just, you know, people themselves and, you know, the private sector?
I think, again, it's access, right? It's access, the ability to own a smartphone at, let's say, at $100 is something which was not there 3 years, 4 years back, and that the smartphone penetration in India has really taken off, and it's outpacing the digital internet penetration in India.
Sentiment about India, especially, you know, since the election last year, has been very positive in the past 1 year. How is that changing or helping what, you know, all of them are doing, or even, you know, what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it just really comes down to confidence and optimism about the future. I would say that's available in adequate, if not, you know, plentiful quantities today. And really, for growth, you need that, right? You need to believe that the future will be better than today. I think across the ecosystem, people believe that a lot more today. They're willing to invest for the future. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to take risk. And I think sentiment has a lot to do with that. Of course, now we have to do implementation and simplify, unify, engage, all the things that I mentioned earlier. But sentiment starts, it all starts with the hope that you can actually do something. And that, I think, is, you know, as high now as I've ever seen it.
Is this, you know, the time for India's opportunity then?
I think it is, because like you said, the confidence levels are really high and people are really positive about everything now. I mean, a lot of new initiatives which kind of have given a lot of confidence to people, and so I think now is the time to grab that opportunity and make the best use of it.
So how long do you think it'll be before we sort of see the next big thing come from India?
Well, I think it's possible it's already been started. It might take us a few years to see that, but it's possible it's already there. So I don't think this is something that we have to wait a very long time for. It will require probably a higher degree of technical capabilities and the ability to service customers better than we've ever done before. But I'm hopeful. I think these businesses are already here.
Well, thank you so much all for being on this edition of Talking Business with us today. Next week, Michelle Fleury will be in New York, and she'll be talking about inequality and what that means for the world's economy. Until then, for all the latest business news from around the world, check out our website bbc.com/business. Bye-bye.